I thought I was living the dream, married to the man I adored, expecting our first child, and surrounded by people I trusted most. When my childhood best friend lost her apartment, we didn't think twice about inviting her into our home. I was pregnant, glowing, and foolishly confident that our little family was growing in the right direction. But while I lay in a hospital bed, giving life to our daughter, he was back at home, in our bed, giving my best friend something else entirely. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical, raw, and cruel. What followed wasn't a dramatic explosion, but a slow, agonizing unraveling of the life I thought I knew. This is a story of betrayal at the most vulnerable moment of my life, of secrets kept under my own roof, and of the painful strength it took to choose myself and my child when everything else fell apart. Part 1, The Guest Room. I was 6 months pregnant when Kara moved in. It started with a late-night phone call. Her voice cracked through the receiver, trembling as she explained that her landlord had evicted her without warning. She didn't have anywhere to go, not right away. Of course, I didn't hesitate. Kara and I had known each other since 2nd grade. She was the one who held my hand during my first breakup, who danced beside me on my wedding day, who threw me the loudest baby shower I never asked for but secretly loved. My husband, Ryan, didn't hesitate either. He smiled that easy, dimpled grin of his and wrapped his arm around my shoulders, already whispering, "Of course she can stay." He was the kind of man people trusted, kind, steady, impossibly supportive. He'd been there through every doctor's appointment, every midnight craving, every anxious, hormonal meltdown. The first few weeks were smooth enough. Kara kept to herself, respectful, grateful. She cooked dinner a few nights a week, helped me fold the endless piles of tiny clothes, and laughed loudly during our favorite reality shows. It felt a little like high school again, all three of us eating takeout, feet propped on the coffee table, trading jokes and memories. There was comfort in it, familiarity. But slowly, without me realizing, the rhythm of the house shifted. I'd find them talking in the kitchen when I came downstairs late from a nap. Their conversation hushed, only to jolt upright when they saw me. Kara stopped joining me on the couch and started sitting closer to Ryan. Their eyes would meet in moments they thought I wasn't watching. There was a new intimacy there, one that made my skin crawl even if I couldn't name why. I brushed it off. Hormones, I told myself. Jealousy, insecurity. I was pregnant and exhausted and overly emotional, a walking cliché of suspicion. But then came the night I woke up to an empty bed. It was 2:17 a.m. And I rolled over to reach for Ryan, only to find his side of the bed cold. I called out. No answer. I walked, or waddled, down the hallway, the house eerily quiet, until I reached the kitchen. He wasn't there, but Kara was. She was standing in the dim light of the fridge, wearing one of Ryan's hoodies. My hoodie. She turned when she saw me, her face flushing crimson, just grabbing water. She stammered. Couldn't sleep. Where was Ryan? Oh, he went to the store. Said he'd be quick. At 2 in the morning? I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I was tired. So tired. I swallowed the lump in my throat and went back to bed, pretending I believed her. The next morning, Ryan acted like nothing had happened, kissed my forehead, brought me breakfast, asked if the baby had been kicking more. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. Because the alternative, that something was happening right under my nose, in the very house where I planned to raise our child, was too terrifying to face. So I buried it. That day, I folded onesies and smiled for photos and told myself I was lucky, blessed, that Ryan was just stressed, that Kara was just lonely, that I was imagining things. But the truth? The truth was already in motion. Already tangled in sheets and whispered in hallways and sealed behind doors I had blindly walked past. And I was about to find out just how deep betrayal can go, and how cruel it is when it hides behind the people you love most. While I carried our baby, he carried her lies. Part 7. The apology that wasn't meant for me. The first week home from the hospital was chaos, the kind that smothered you with love and exhaustion in equal measure. My body was healing, my emotions were everywhere. And my daughter, my perfect, tiny daughter, was a round-the-clock reminder of both joy and devastation. I didn't hear from Ryan for 3 days after the hospital. Then one evening, my sister walked into the living room holding out her phone. "You need to see this," she said softly. It was a video, a shaky, vertical clip of Ryan, sitting on a couch I didn't recognize, holding a glass of something amber-colored. He looked drunk, or maybe just hollowed out. Across from him, off-screen, came a voice I instantly recognized. Her voice. Lena. I just think we need to stop pretending like this wasn't a mistake, she was saying. I know it was, Ryan muttered. Jesus, Lena, I know. She was carrying our kid, and You don't love me, Lena snapped. He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back, rubbing his face. I thought I did. I don't even know what I thought. But it's like I woke up one day and realized I ruined everything for something that wasn't even real. There was a long pause, then Lena said quietly, so what now? Ryan stared at his drink. I try to make it right. Not with you, with her, if she'll ever let me. The video cut off. I sat in stunned silence. It wasn't an apology meant for me. It wasn't a desperate plea or a rehearsed confession. It was raw, private, not filtered through a performance of guilt. And maybe that's why it stung more than any of his texts. Because he meant it. Because for a second, I saw the weight of what he'd done actually land on him. I handed the phone back to my sister. Who sent it? I asked. Lena, she said, voice low. I think she wanted you to see that she's out, that it's over. I almost laughed. How ironic, I thought. She slept with my husband and still gets to walk away first. But something in me softened, not for her, not for him, but for myself. I realized I had been carrying so much rage that it was turning into poison. And I was done letting that happen. The next day, I texted Ryan. You can come see her this weekend. 2 hours, I'll be here the whole time. No hi, no hope you're well, no opening the door wide again. Just boundaries, clear and cold. He replied within seconds. Thank you, I'll be there. Saturday came. He arrived with a stuffed giraffe and a visible lump in his throat. He didn't try to hug me, didn't try to talk about us. He just sat quietly on the couch, holding his daughter like she was the last precious thing he had left in the world. She slept through most of it. When he left, he said, "Thank you for letting me come." I nodded, not because I forgave him, but because, for once, he'd respected my space. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in months. He doesn't get to be my husband anymore. But maybe, just maybe, he can learn to be her father. And I'm learning to be more than the woman he left behind. I'm becoming the woman who survived. While I carried our baby, he carried her lies. Part 3, The Truth Behind Closed Doors. The following days were heavy with silence. Not the peaceful kind. Like when two people sit comfortably without speaking. No, this silence had weight. It followed us from room to room, wrapping around every half-finished sentence, every false smile, every avoided gaze. I'd walk into the kitchen, and they'd both fall quiet. I'd sit on the couch, and one of them would find an excuse to leave. The energy was undeniable, tense, suspicious, poisonous. I started keeping track of the little things. The way Kara always lingered near Ryan. The way he looked at her when he thought I wasn't watching. She began dressing differently too. Like she'd forgotten this was my house. Shorter shorts, looser tops that slipped off her shoulder just enough. She didn't bother hiding anymore. But the worst part wasn't her. It was him. Because every time he looked at her like she was oxygen, he stopped looking at me. One night, I went through his phone. I hadn't done that in years. We used to pride ourselves on no secrets. We laughed at couples who needed passwords and hiding spots. But that night, while he showered, I unlocked his phone using the same code he hadn't changed in 6 years. There wasn't much. That's what scared me most. There were no messages between him and Kara, none. No call logs, no texts, like they'd never spoken outside of the room we all shared. Which told me one thing, he was deleting them. Carefully, methodically. He wasn't just slipping, he was covering his tracks. But one thing he missed? The photos. Hidden deep in a locked album, there were 3 blurry selfies of them together. One with their faces pressed close at what looked like a diner. One in our backyard, where he kissed her cheek while she giggled. And one from the night she came home early from her girls' trip. Sitting together in his car. her hand on his thigh. My heart didn't just break, it collapsed. I felt a strange kind of calm, like watching a wave finally crash after standing in its shadow for too long. I closed the album, locked the phone, and placed it back where I found it. Then I walked into the nursery. The soft pink walls we'd painted together looked sickly now. The crib we built on a Sunday afternoon, I could barely look at it. I sat on the rocking chair and rested my hand on my belly, trying not to cry, but the tears came anyway, hot and silent. Was this the home I wanted for our daughter? A house filled with lies and half-truths? A marriage built on routine while love was handed off to someone else behind my back? No. I needed to be smart. I needed to think, not react. I started documenting things, timestamps, photos, little notes in a hidden journal. I even installed a voice recorder app on an old phone I kept charging in the laundry room. I didn't know what I was planning, not yet, but I knew I needed proof, for my own sanity, for the storm I could feel building. Then it happened. One night, I was upstairs folding baby clothes when I heard them. Not whispers, not silence. Laughter. Real, loud laughter coming from the living room. I crept to the staircase, careful not to make a sound. From the landing, I could see them, huddled on the couch, knees touching, wine glasses half full. They were watching a movie, but not really. Kara had her hand on his arm, his was on her thigh, and in that moment, they looked like a couple, my husband and my best friend, in my home. I stood frozen, the laundry slipping from my hands. And then, as if fate decided enough was enough, Ryan looked up and saw me. His face dropped. Kara whipped her head around, eyes wide with horror. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. I didn't say a word either. I just turned and walked back into the bedroom, shut the door, and locked it behind me. My entire body shook. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would bruise my ribs from the inside. I thought I might go into labor then and there. But I didn't. Instead, I lay on the bed in silence, staring at the ceiling, one hand on my belly and the other gripping my phone like a weapon. He didn't knock. He didn't follow. And that told me everything I needed to know. While I carried our baby, he carried her lies. Part 4, the silence that screamed everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, fully dressed, watching the shadows stretch across the ceiling until morning came. Every sound from the hallway made my heart race. I imagined them standing outside the door, whispering about me, planning their next move, but no one came. No one knocked. By morning, I was no longer the same woman who offered my best friend a place to stay. I wasn't the wife who smiled at her husband's jokes or folded his laundry with love. Something had snapped inside me, not just broken, transformed, like grief melting into clarity. I needed a plan. I made coffee as if nothing had happened, even though I hadn't slept in 30 hours. I made breakfast too, for me only. When Kara stumbled into the kitchen, her hair messy, wearing one of Ryan's old t-shirts, I didn't look at her. "Morning," she muttered. I didn't answer. She hovered near the counter like a ghost, waiting for me to speak, to snap, to cry, but I didn't, because now, she didn't get that part of me, not my pain, not my voice. I could see the panic flicker in her eyes. Good. Ryan didn't come down until almost noon. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. He didn't greet me. He didn't greet her. He just poured himself a mug of coffee and stood near the window, staring out like the world outside could answer for what he'd done. They were both waiting for me to explode. But I stayed silent. Because silence unnerves cowards more than screaming ever could. That afternoon, while they were gone, somewhere, together, I didn't ask, I went to the attic. I dug through dusty boxes until I found the spare suitcase. I started packing, not to run, but to prepare. My due date was only weeks away, and I knew I couldn't bring my daughter into this house with them in it. It wasn't just betrayal, it was corruption. I refused to let my child breathe her first air in a place filled with lies. And then I called my sister. Not Kara. My real sister, the one who lived 3 states away, the one I hadn't visited in over a year. She picked up on the first ring, and when I said her name, I choked. "I need to get out," I whispered. She didn't ask why, she just said, "How soon?" That night, I finally confronted Ryan. We sat across from each other at the dining table, like strangers negotiating a hostage exchange. He avoided my eyes. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "How long?" I asked. His head dropped. He rubbed his forehead. It wasn't. "How long?" A pause. Then, "A few months." It hit like a slap, even though I'd known. Months. Not weeks. Not a single night of weakness. Months. I clenched my fists. "Under my roof, while I carried your child." He looked up then, eyes glassy. "It just happened. We didn't plan it. I never meant to hurt you." I laughed, bitter, broken. "You never meant to stop either." He didn't deny it. And that was the worst part. "I trusted you," I whispered. "I trusted her. I brought her here. I gave her a home." He covered his face with his hands. "I know. I hate myself. I don't know what I was thinking." "No." I cut him off. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't think I'd catch you." His silence was an admission. I stood, my body aching with fatigue and fury. "I'm leaving." He looked up sharply. "Where would you go?" You're almost due." "I'll be fine." "Let's talk about this," he begged. "Let's go to therapy. Let's fix it." "Fix what?" I hissed. "You broke it. You burned it. There's nothing left to fix." He reached for me, but I backed away. "No, you don't get to touch me. You don't get to ask me for anything. You had everything, and you threw it away for someone who watched me carry your baby and still chose to betray me." His face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the man I once loved, ashamed, afraid, broken. But it was too late. The next morning, I packed the last of my things and called a cab. Kara stood in the hallway, trying to speak, but I didn't let her. Her words meant nothing to me now, lies wrapped in pity. I stepped into the cab without looking back. I was gone before noon. I didn't cry. I held my belly, felt the kick beneath my hand, and whispered to my daughter, "We're going to be okay, I promise." Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. While I carried our baby, he carried her lies. Part 5. A new beginning isn't always freedom. My sister met me at the station with tears in her eyes and arms that felt like home. I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years, but that didn't matter. She was the one person I knew wouldn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. "Just rest," she said softly as she helped me into the car. "You're safe now." But was I? I wanted to believe her, to let her words settle over me like a blanket and erase everything I'd left behind. But grief has sharp edges, and betrayal leaves splinters in places you never expect. Every moment of silence, every pause between thoughts, aches with the memory of what you lost. I stayed in her guest room. It wasn't big, but it was warm and quiet, and the window overlooked a field of wildflowers just starting to bloom. Sometimes I'd sit there for hours, watching them sway in the wind, letting their stillness remind me to breathe. The baby moved constantly now. She was restless, or maybe I was, and she felt it too. I talked to her more than I talked to anyone else. I told her everything, not just the pain, but the hope too, because even after all that had happened, I still wanted her to be born into something beautiful. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, convinced I could still hear Ryan's voice whispering in another room, not to me, but to her. I'd sit on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, until I remembered where I was. Safe, but still haunted. One afternoon, I got a message from Ryan. I hadn't blocked him, not yet. I wasn't sure why. Maybe part of me wanted to know if he was hurting too. "I'm sorry. I miss you. Please let me be there when she's born." I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keys, but I didn't reply. What could I say? That I missed the version of him that didn't exist anymore? That his betrayal had rewritten every memory we'd shared? Instead, I closed the phone and went for a walk. It was a small town. No one knew my name. I passed bakeries, quiet bookstores, an old movie theater with faded posters. People smiled when I passed, not because they knew me, but because they didn't. There was something strangely comforting about being a stranger. No one looked at me like a woman who'd been cheated on. I was just someone, a pregnant woman in a hoodie, walking in the sun. But even then, I carried the weight of what I'd left behind. It wasn't just Ryan and Kara. It was me, the version of me who believed in forever, who trusted too easily, who thought love meant safety. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone new, bruised. Yes, but not broken. One night, my sister found me sitting on the bathroom floor, crying into a towel. The silence between us held more comfort than words. She sat down beside me, rested her hand on my shoulder. You don't have to be strong all the time. I'm not, I whispered. I'm just trying to survive. And I was. Every day I stayed away was an act of defiance. Every heartbeat of my daughter was a promise that I could build something better, something honest, something mine. I started writing again, short notes at first, letters to my unborn child. I wrote about her name, about what I hoped she'd inherit, my laugh, not his lies, and about how fiercely I already loved her. I didn't write about the betrayal, not directly. That would come later, when she was old enough to ask, and I'd be strong enough to tell her. Weeks passed. I went to doctor appointments with my sister. I assembled the crib with her fiancé. I laughed at bad TV and cried when no one was watching. Slowly, the storm began to settle. And then, one morning, I opened my inbox and saw it. Subject, from Kara. My hand trembled as I clicked. I know you hate me. You should. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I moved out. He and I aren't together. I never meant for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I hope someday you'll find peace. I hope she's healthy. I'm sorry. Kara. I stared at the screen for a long time. I felt nothing. No rage, no pain, just a numb emptiness that surprised me. Because I finally realized I didn't care anymore. She wasn't part of my story anymore. Neither of them were. And that, in itself, was a kind of peace. While I carried our baby, he carried her lies. Part 6, the day she arrived. And he showed up. The day I went into labor started quietly. A dull ache in my lower back. A tightening that came and went. I'd read all the books, knew this was probably the beginning. But I said nothing for hours. I didn't want to believe it. Not yet. Not until I was sure. Around noon, the contractions got stronger. My sister packed a bag faster than I'd ever seen her move, tossing essentials into it while I tried not to panic. This was really happening. After all the heartache, all the pain, she was coming. The drive to the hospital felt like a blur, pain mixed with adrenaline, and somewhere beneath it all, fear, not of the labor itself. I had prepared for that. It was the thought of him, of Ryan. I hadn't told him I was in labor. I hadn't planned to, but I hadn't blocked him either. And he must have known. My sister stayed by my side the whole time. She squeezed my hand through every contraction, wiped my forehead, whispered that I was strong, that I was doing beautifully. But just before I was wheeled into the delivery room, a nurse stepped in, looking uncertain. "There's a man here," she said gently. "He says he's the baby's father." My heart dropped. My sister's face tightened. "Do you want him here?" I didn't know how to answer. My first instinct was to scream no, but then I remembered all the nights I'd lain awake, trying to picture what our daughter's life would be. I didn't want to rob her of a father, but I also didn't want her to grow up thinking it was okay to be second best. "Let him wait," I said. "This moment is for her and me." And so I gave birth without him in the room. It was long, it was painful, it was raw and terrifying and beautiful. And then she was here. A perfect, wailing, red-faced bundle placed on my chest. My daughter. Everything stopped. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak, it didn't vanish, but it moved to the background. She was the only thing that mattered. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Later, when we were moved to the recovery room, I finally told the nurse he could come in. Ryan stepped in quietly, eyes red, hair disheveled, like he hadn't slept in days. "She's beautiful," he whispered, staring at her. "Just like you." I said nothing. He reached out slowly. "Can I hold her?" I nodded, but only because I wanted to see if he could handle the weight, not just of the baby, but of everything he'd done. He took her into his arms, and for a moment, I saw the man I used to know, the one who held my hand during ultrasounds, who kissed my belly goodnight, who whispered dreams into my ear. But that man was a ghost now. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I never stopped loving you." I closed my eyes, not because I believed him, but because I didn't want to cry in front of him. You stopped loving me the second you chose her, I whispered. The second you looked at me, pregnant with your child, and still went to her. He looked away. I know, he said, and I'll regret it every day. You don't get to rewrite the story now, I told him. You don't get to walk in here, hold her, and act like you didn't burn down our life. He nodded slowly. But I want to try. For her, for you, anything. Then leave, I said. Let me have this moment, just me and her. Start by respecting that. He hesitated, and then, to his credit, he handed her back, kissed her forehead, and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. And just like that, the room felt whole again. My daughter slept against my chest, her tiny breaths steady and soft. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be legal talks, custody discussions, late-night doubts. But for that one perfect moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. Just a mother, just a baby, and a future still waiting to be written. While I carried our baby, he carried her lies. Part 8, I chose me. The days began to stretch into something resembling peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. The kind that comes from accepting what you cannot change and slowly rebuilding what you can. Ryan visited every weekend, always on time, always respectful. He brought diapers, baby formula, sometimes new books for her. He never brought up the past, never begged for another chance. I think, deep down, he knew he didn't deserve one. Lena had vanished entirely. After sending that video, she went quiet, no texts, no social media posts, not even through mutual friends. A part of me still wanted closure, to scream at her, to ask why, but another part knew it wouldn't change anything. There were no magic words that could undo what they'd done. And the more time passed, the more I realized I didn't need her apology. Or his. I needed mine. One morning, about 6 weeks postpartum, I stood in front of the mirror. My body had changed, softer, heavier, marked by what I'd been through, but I didn't hate it. Not anymore. My stretch marks, my swollen ankles, my tired eyes, they were proof I'd carried life, endured pain, and survived betrayal. I whispered to my reflection, I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I thought their choices meant I wasn't enough. You were always enough. It sounds silly now, but that moment broke something open in me. It wasn't just healing, it was reclamation. I started therapy again. I joined a local mother's support group. I cried with strangers who became friends. I laughed again, really laughed, when one of them joked that men are just a lesson wrapped in cologne. And I started writing. At first, it was just journaling, then, essays. Then, one day, I submitted a piece to a motherhood magazine about grief, strength, and finding your identity after betrayal. They published it. That day, I walked to my daughter's crib, picked her up, and whispered, "Your mom's a writer now." She gurgled, and I took it as applause. Ryan never asked for more than fatherhood. He stuck to his lane, and for that, I was grateful. He wasn't the man I once loved, but he was trying to be the man she deserved. One afternoon, while handing her over after a visit, he paused at the door. "I know I ruined everything," he said quietly, "but you've become someone incredible." I nodded. I always was. You just stopped seeing it. He didn't argue, just nodded and walked away. That night, I wrote again, this time, the closing lines of my story. This wasn't the life I planned, but it's mine. And every day, I'm choosing it. Not because it's easy, but because I chose me. And that's the truth. I chose me. Not the betrayal, not the pain, not the ruins he left behind. I chose to rise.